All right. Happy Monday night.
Yay.
I was going to just do a little banter here for a minute, let people get logged on. So we know it usually takes folks, they're not waiting anxiously the way we are on the back end. So we'll give them just a minute, then we will get started. Not like Zoom, though. I'm not going to wait that long.
All right.
All right. All right. I want to welcome everybody who's joining us online to One More Page Books virtually, although in my basement. So it's the One More Page platform. We are so happy to have both of our authors here tonight. We're helping to launch Stephen Spotswood's debut novel, which we're very excited about. And I'm just going to do a quick introduction so as folks get settled in. Stephen is an award-winning playwright, journalist, and theater educator, and a good friend of our stores. So we're very happy to be able to do this tonight. He lives in DC with his wife, who's also an author, Jessica Spotswood. And the book tonight, Fortune Favors the Dead, is his first novel. So very excited to welcome you. And then we are also so thrilled that Alexandra Petri is here. She is a columnist for the Washington Post. She also had a book come out this summer during COVID author summer. Nothing is Wrong, and Here is Why. It's a great book of essays that if you haven't picked it up yet, I hope you will. She was also on Rolling Stone's list of the funniest people right now and won a Shorty Award for her parody Twitter account. All of these things are to say that she's very smart and very funny. So hope you pick up her book. We are both on Facebook and on YouTube tonight. I just want to remind folks that if you would like to comment or ask a question, you can do that. On Facebook, it's just in the comments, and on YouTube, it's on the chat. And we will be getting to questions later in the hour. I am also going to pop in a couple of links that will pop up in both of those places so that you all can order books. Both Alexandra and Stephen have agreed to sign copies. So if you'd like to order signed copies, this will be how you do it. Stephen is also going to be personalizing some copies. So get your orders in by tomorrow evening, because we're going to cut that off since he's going to come in and sign this week. So get your orders in. All right. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to you guys and have a great conversation. I'll see you later.
All right. Thank you so much. And here we are. And Alex is frozen. Oh, no.
Oh, no.
At least she's frozen in a very cheery, if a little scared way.
I don't think this is going to make a difference, but let me try this. What happened? We were all just chatting.
I don't know. Let's see.
Hang on, everybody. We love technology. See, if we were in the store, this wouldn't be happening. Look at you!
Yay!
Oh man,
What a dramatic beginning.
Did you get a minute or like 3 minutes of me going hello, hello, hello? Because
no,
that's
just,
what I
just
was
your frozen picture. Yeah.
Oh well, hello.
Hey. Okay. Now we're back. Yay.
Now we're back. Oh man.
Things that you can't get in real life.
No, exactly. Yeah, none of the glitching, none of the freezing. That real two-dimensional quality that only our frozen virtual selves possess. Things we're going to miss when this is all over and we can gather in person.
I'm really looking forward to missing it, though. I'd like to start missing it as soon as possible.
Yeah, no, exactly. I can't be nostalgic for this time soon enough. And I don't think I will be nostalgic for it. But if I am, even the slightest bit, I hope it will be soon. But no, so I was just thinking back to the fact that it's a spooky season of an election year, and like clockwork, Steve Spotswood has produced an amazing work that has delighted me. Because I was 2016, Girl in the Red Corner, your MMA play came out with the Welders, which we were both the second generation. And I was like, this is the nicest thing about November of 2016. And now, like clockwork, we have fortune favors the dead. So thank you for doing this for me personally, which I assume is why just to make November's tolerable. So I really appreciate it.
No, you're what was just for you. You're welcome.
But so how hard is it to come up with a mystery plot? I'm sorry, I'm going to be like normal questions because how?
How hard? So like mysteries are my comfort food. Like at least 50% of the novels I read and have read since I could read novels have been mysteries. So like I've read thousands of them, of the plots. So I don't know how hard it is. I think like being with both of us being, see, you're a playwright. So you know like how much plot is important to plays because we have such like a restricted amount of real estate. So like plotting seems to be more important on stage than elsewhere. So that seems to have transferred really nicely into mysteries where if you can create a nice, tight, intricate plot, then you can do a bunch of other fun stuff and using that as a scaffold. Yeah. Yes.
No, so are you like a plot first person where you're like, because I feel like there's like sort of like seating your pants type people where you're like, I know I have like a character voice and I'm just going to keep writing until something happens. Or there's like, I've got everything planned to the last detail and now I can finally put my pen on the paper.
Oh my God, no. I am somewhere in the middle. Like I had the characters first. Like basically so last year, what the heck year is this now?
I think it's 2020, but I could be wrong.
Yeah, 2 falls ago, I was doing a reread of a bunch of Rex Stout novels, and he was a mystery writer who wrote from like the mid 30s through the 70s.
I've never read him, but I know that P.G. Wodehouse characters are always reading him in universe, so that's a good mystery. It's
because Stout wrote the same characters for 40 years, like the same 2 main protagonists for 40 years. They never changed. They're great. I started reading them, and I was like, I think I'm gonna read all of them in order. So I did that, and at some point I was like, you know, what would I, if I was given this sandbox to play in, like, what would I do? And the first thing that I came up with were the main characters, like Will Parker and Lillian Pentecost. And once I had them, and specifically Will's voice, then I could start thinking about plot. And I had like, just like playwriting, I had like tentpole moments. Like I knew like, okay, this is the next big thing that happens, and this is the next big thing, and this is how it ends. How I get from point to point, I don't know. I cannot, the whole like intricate outlining, like a beat work, like a beat sheet from like one French scene to another. I've never been able to do. I've made students do it. I feel bad every time. I'm like, learn how to do this so you never have to do it again. Yeah.
Now, speaking of a tentpole moment, so circus is a thing that comes up in the course of this, and I feel like I know that Steve has been into this world before in his playwriting life. So how did, like, were you just like, now that I know so much about sort of the world of circus and burlesque, I gotta keep using this, or what was your? How did you think this has got to be part of the tale?
I think I've just always loved circuses and carnivals and sideshows. Like, I have very fond memories of my dad taking me when I was a little kid to for a variety of circuses, like from like little small rinky-dink circuses to like Ringling Brothers. And I even remember like there was one smaller one that actually had a sideshow. Like I remember going through. It wasn't like a giant elaborate grotesquerie sideshow, but like a really basic sideshow. And so like I remember that. I remember having a lot of fun. So like those have always been elements that I brought into my shows. In theater, it's been a lot because it's very visually fun to play with. And also I love allowing actors on stage to do things that you don't expect them to do, like skill sets that you would not usually see in a like a straight play. Like in one show that I wrote called The Last Burlesque, that takes place in the The Last Days of a Dying Burlesque House, we found out that one of our actors had some. He had a lot of like. I knew he had a clown background, but I did not know that he had human blockhead background. So we actually had him hammer a 3-inch nail into his nostril on stage, like 2 feet from audience members. So all that is to say that like sideshow and circus has been a big thing that I like playing in, and I don't know how, like, just the idea of like Will growing up in like that post-depression era 30s, going and like, what do? Oh, you run away and join the circus.
Yeah.
And then like what happens there, you get somebody, I want to say, like, what if she learned everything, like just a little bit of everything, and took that skill set, and like how would that translate to being a working detective in New York in 1945?
And the answer is very well. It's a very useful skill set to have.
It is a very useful. Well, that's because the person who creates the world makes it so. Yeah.
No, I love how, like, if you're writing it, like, lockpicks can work if you make them. It's like, I've never successfully picked a lock as a human being, but if I were to write something, people could do it all the time effortlessly. The magic of the page.
Yep.
I guess.
I have tried. It is much harder than you think. That, well, yeah. Maybe it's exactly as hard as you think it is. But it's much harder than books say.
Yeah, no, they're always like, just like, you feel the tumblers. And I'm like, I don't know what tumblers you're talking about. I can't feel anything. I'm just sort of exerting pressure with
the tumblers of your heart. Just feel that. Feel that. Oh my God.
Yeah, the truest, deepest tumbler is the tumbler of the heart. There's some like internet teen who's very confused by, all right, Tumblr. Okay.
Oh, God.
Remember Tumblr? I don't personally, of course. But no, how did you find the time period? Because I love that it's a period book, but I'm also like, how did you choose?
So as I said, like I was reading Rex Stout, and like the earliest novel takes place in the mid 30s. The last story is in like the early 70s. So I was like looking at these detectives throughout like 2/3 of the 20th century. And my favorite has always been like that, like just after World War II era. It just feels like sort of like the high, or like right before and right after, like the height of Americana. And like when you could like open up a Sears Roebuck catalog and order weird shit that you only ever
order
find.
A house.
Yeah, you can order a house. It's great. And so like I was really like, I actually sat and like thought about it for a while. Like what, because I was thinking I would like to keep writing these characters for as long as I can. If I can have a 40-year career like Rex Stout, fantastic. But like what time period moving forward would be the most interesting to see these two specific people have to deal with? And I thought, that post-World War II, like what we think of, or the narrative has become a golden age of like, we just won a war, now we're going to come back and we're going to turn inward, and there's going to be this great. It's like where the solidification of the American dream happens. Like it's the suburbs, white picket fence, 2.5 kids, that whole thing. But it's also McCarthyism and the Lavender Scare, and like the snuffing out of subcultures, left and right, and like it's all the people who had to suffer and be forgotten and trampled in order for this narrative of a golden age of America to happen. Anyway, that was like, I didn't think about that at the time. That is like, like I have thought about it since then. I'm like, yes, this is why I did this thing. I don't know if I could have vocalized it like a year and a half ago. But that's why I'm like, I want to see these two characters, like Will, who is a bisexual woman in 1945, Lillian Pentecost, who is certainly non-traditional in many ways, have to like traverse this this period of time, like the late 40s into the 50s. So yeah, that's why. That's
no, because it's a, and I feel like you do a good job of like, it's, you can tell that it's in a time period, but people aren't sitting there being like, yes, like here's some old timey slang, just sort of like constantly like it's legible. But I feel like it's also sort of like there's some literary references thrown in there. At one point, Will's like, it's a hit, a palpable hit, and I'm like, somebody's been reading his Shakespeare. So other than Rex Stout, who was sort of in the back of your head as you were typing?
I mean, for authors, it was like it was Rex Stout. It's a lot of like the hard-boiled detective. It's like Raymond Chandler, Dashiell Hammett, certainly Agatha Christie, who was neither hard-boiled nor American, but kind of really perfected the character-driven mystery. Not so much like the voice-driven mystery, but like the character, where like the story is dependent upon the characters, like and the people, rather than like sort of like circumstance and like the Rube Goldberg machine of clue and plot and so forth. So those also like I grew up with being like spending a lot of time with my grandparents and a great aunt, all of whom like sort of were lived in that like generation of like they grew up in the Depression. And a lot of their houses were like, some things were frozen in like 1945. It's like, this shelf has not changed in that amount of time.
It's been here forever. Like,
so it's like I've always like that's where I get my love of like mid-century Americana, and like I could, and like having grown up with people who lived and like were adults in that time was probably super helpful.
Yeah, no, because I feel like, as somebody who like hung out with a lot of like older people when I was like a kid, I'm like, oh, everyone knows like that song, like A Blossom Fell and like Alice Blue Gowns, and it's just like, no one, you've been hanging out with your grandparents too much. These references are not legible.
Yep.
But it's funny because it's I feel like this is in a nifty place because as somebody who's a huge Raymond Chandler fan, because he's all like, he had that weird like anti-Agatha Christie essay that he wrote at one point where he was just like, these, murder mysteries these days, none of it makes sense. And I'm like, have you read your own writing, Raymond Chandler? Because I love the similes, but truly none of the plots make sense. So I feel like this is like, it's all the fun of noir, but it's set with like the characters who actually, it makes sense what they're doing and it matters who they are for what they're doing. But do you have Raymond Chandler positive or negative feelings? Because you can throw down.
I have not read that essay, but now I'm going to. Chandler, I feel much the same way you do. I'm like, this is a really good voice. This is really fun to read. Much of this plot makes no sense when you start thinking about it deeply. So I feel much the same way. Yeah, I think like if Chandler and Agatha Christie could have just collaborated like on the one thing, it's like, yeah, like Christie brings the plot, Chandler brings that like hard-boiled.
Yeah, she's got a narrator. Yeah. No, he's just taking dictation from her, and she's like, "Here's what the plot is. Here's all the characters, and you just like describe what you think is going on." I would read the heck out of that book.
That is actually kind of what Rex Stout is. If you ever get around to reading a Wolf, that's what he's sort of known for, marrying the classic British murder mystery with the American hard-boiled voice, minus the noir, minus the like the cynical soul, but with the hard-boiled voice. So like that is what Rex Stout is.
Like a broad is here, but she does genuinely need help, and she's not about to like screw me over with my coffee pot. That's she
will screw you over, or things will go terribly wrong, but it's not because the world is set so that evil must always win and good means nothing. Right,
like the horrible like nihilism at the end where it's like, oh no, so I feel like it's funny when you start spending time with your characters and they're sort of like people like. Was there anything that you discovered about them that you didn't know going in where you're like, oh crap, I thought that it was going to be like Becca was going to be this way, but in fact, totally.
I mean, I'm sure. I've been with them like so long now. It feels, because I didn't know. Let's see, what didn't I know? I did not know when I started that that Will would have. I didn't know she would have so much to prove, and that so much of her actions and reactions will come from that. And now that I've discovered that, I'm like, oh, this is like like one of the core motivations of her going forward, like into future novels. I also didn't know that like Lillian Pentecost could be as much. Could be. I did not know that their relationship was so loving. I think maybe because like when I started, it was inspired by Rex Stout and his pair of Nero Wolfe and Archie Goodwin, who have a friendly but working relationship, and would not call it loving. But as I started writing this, I was like, I want them to genuinely care about each other in useful, interesting, deep ways. So like those were two. I think those were two of the biggest discoveries I made. Yeah.
Because like, what is it about detective in sort of two sides of those? You got like Holmes, you got your Watson, you got your Rex or Nero Wolfe and Archie, whose name you just informed us of for the first time for me. You got like or Sir. What's his name? Poirot, and then you got Captain Hastings. There's always two. There are no more, no less. A detective and a detective sidekick who's writing down what the story is.
Yeah.
I wonder, do you have a theory as to why, or you're just like, please, now that I've done it, it makes total sense to me, or you're like,
Well, I think for a lot of them, like especially for Holmes and Watson, like you need so much of Holmes is internal. It's like the genius who is working things out, and we cannot see the mechanism of the genius. We can only see the output. And we need somebody constantly there to be like, he is doing this, and like, please have this please explain this to me, and by explaining it to me, explain it to the reader, like that. Like Watson is our way in.
Yeah.
And like in the same way that like Hastings is our way into Poirot. Like that.
Like, to quote another Will Rogers, he's like, we can't all be heroes because somebody has to sit on the curb and clap as they go by. And I feel like you need one person whose job is to clap as they go by. But like, you can have sort of varying degrees. Like, there's a very funny Kate Beaton comic about Holmes and Watson where she's like, there's many different Watsons. There's like Watson who's just a bumbling idiot throughout. And then there's like Watson who's sort of clever. And like, we have this notion, like, depending on which interpretation of the like Holmes Watson story you're watching, he could just be like a guy with a mustache who has no clue what's going on at any time, or he's like actually contributing in some way. And I feel like you get sort of the whole variety of I forget where I was going with this, but I do think like as foils to one another, you can do interesting things where it's just like, you can't be so completely bumbling that you don't appreciate what is going on, or you're just like constantly baffled by how the detective on the case has come to their conclusion. But you also can't be so confident that it's like, why is this person even assisting anyone? They should be striking off on their own. So there has to be like something holding the relationship together.
Yeah, that is thinking forward, and I'm like, yeah, it's going to be like a balancing act to figure.
Yeah, so speaking of thinking forward, like, do you have any like dream next moves for the gang?
Dream next? Well, okay, so there is a second book. I think like I've mentioned it very like sort of like obliquely on the internet, but there's been no like big announcement. But I'll say it here.
Hey, the cat! Meow.
There will be.
There's a bag. There's cats out now.
I haven't been told I can't say, so I'm going to assume that I can, and it's better to ask. It's easier to ask forgiveness. Yeah. So there's definitely going to be a second book. It's written. I have the notes from my editor that after this week is over, I will dive into. I promise. When I can think of it, and not just this first book. So there's a second one. I'm actually working on the third.
Oh man!
I have the first 5 planned out. Don't have all of them sold, but I have them planned out, and with several ideas going past that. So when I was saying like I really did mean like watching these characters go through the end of the 40s and into the 50s and like beyond if I can. So yeah, so that's
very exciting. Way to go! Wait, so which leads me to another question though, which is why were you like, this is the first one though? Like this has got to be the first one.
Bum bum bum. other the first plot I thought of, Alex.
That's a good answer.
The way I think actually Will says it in the book. I don't know, maybe she says it out loud in the book. But it's when Will first realizes that, like, is this adventure where she first realizes that she has not just been hired to be Lillian Pentecost's assistant in perpetuity. She has been hired to eventually replace her. Like, that's what Lillian is doing. Like, she is grooming Will to eventually sometime take her place. Which for Will raises the stakes enormously. And so, like, with that in mind, like every adventure going forward, she is going to have that like looming over her, that giant chip on her shoulder that like, I need to be better. I need to she has that goal of Lillian Pentecost, and she's always going to be trying to reach it. So yeah, and that's this story is when she first realizes that that's what's happening. So that's why it's the first one. Mind you, it happens like 3 years into their relationship. Like I was like, here they meet, and then we get a fast forward for 3 years.
Then
yeah. So eventually, I could very well like fill in the blanks of that. There's like they had other adventures in those 3 years, which is nice. That's like a thing I can look forward to. Yeah.
You could do prequels, sequels, The Mandalorian, whatever the Mandalorian of this universe is like. I'm not exactly sure what it would be, but something with adjacent but not identical characters who are doing something through space. Yes, in the mystery space, the space that lies within us all. I feel like you were like, we should also discuss Star Wars. So what are your Star Wars thoughts? Like, what's your hot take or tepid, cool, regular room temperature take?
Well, I'm very excited for the season 2 of The Mandalorian.
It was so good.
It was. I'm like that. Once Star Wars gave itself permission to like switch genres from fantasy adventure to like, well, I guess war with Rogue One, and then like Western, and then Western with Mandalorian, and I guess earlier with Solo. I was like, yeah, guys, this is good. Keep doing this. It's great.
You got a whole universe here. You can play with it. Yeah. No, exactly. Because it's like we've done the whole Joseph Campbell. Like we've crossed the threshold. We met the old man. He's become our mentor. Like, you know, we've got our boon. We've brought it back. We're done with all that. Now we want some genre. And I feel like
or stories where there's like not so much at stake for the entire franchise. Like where if there is a bad episode of The Mandalorian, who cares? Whereas if there is a bad movie in the series,
hypothetically, one where like a zombie version of Emperor Palpatine suddenly comes back and starts announcing that people are his relatives. Hypothetically, that might be a bad.
That might be. Oh wow, that was a movie. That was.
Yep.
You know, usually when I watch a movie and like I don't like it, like the farther away I get, I'll be like, no, there were parts that were good. Okay, this was not so bad. But with that one, the farther away I get, the more I'm like, this was not good. I enjoy.
Yeah, no, I like will sit up in bed at like late at night and be like, "Oh no, I just remembered another thing that happened in that movie." Like, it's one of those.
Yep.
Yeah. Oh man, no, which is, I guess. So, what was it like creating your own sort of universe? Like, where like, oh, the rules are my own rules, and like people, because I feel like with like a play, sort of like the rules are like, how does this differ from playwriting? Would you say the most?
The most.
They're both like you create your own world and rules of people, and yet I feel like you have to describe all the things in more detail, and like there's a wall missing sometimes in a play.
Yep. So like the ways that was very much alike. Let's start there. Is like the plot, like plotting. That skill set carried over very nicely, especially the mystery anyway. Like for plays, I'm always like, plot is very important, but it's not the most important thing. It's like the scaffolding you build so that you can tell the really interesting, meaty stuff. And I feel the same way about mysteries. Like my favorite mysteries are always like the voice-driven, character-driven ones. So it's like the mystery plot is the scaffolding you create so that you can like run around with these characters and in their heads and in their hearts. So like the plot stuff, the character-driven stuff, all that carried over nicely. It's like the sheer amount of words is different and a challenge. Like a play is like less than 20,000 words usually. This is like 90,000, so it's like suddenly becomes, you're used to sprinting and suddenly it's a marathon. And like my writer, so this is like the third novel that I'd written, the first one that sold. But every time I did it, like my writer brain eventually is like, we've written enough now. Like, shouldn't we be done? I just have to be like, no, writer brain, this is a marathon. Just we gotta keep going. And then like especially with this one, where setting and time period and all that plays so much into it. With theater, I have costume designers and actors like who have faces and looks, and they move, and I don't have to tell them what to do with their hands because they're good actors. They just do things with their hands. But you get writing a novel and it's like, oh yeah, what is Will wearing? I have not said what she's wearing for like 3 days running in this book. I've got like things like that. I have learned so much about women's fashion in the mid-40s. Like it's just like a massive Pinterest pages of like dress styles and like women's suits and slacks and just trying to figure out how to describe everything like that.
Yeah,
that is like it's like a really tiny nitty-gritty thing, but like that's like one of the bigger challenges.
No, because it is, because also like as a person, like it's hard to do it in a natural way, and I feel like you did a good job because like I know what everyone looks like, but they're not like, I turn to look into the mirror, my auburn waves of hair and my small dress, like all that, like, which I feel like, especially like what's his name, Updike, Irving, they're always just like, here's some very strange descriptions that imply this person's never like met a human being before, but also like they got some anatomical things going on that are problems. But I felt like I always knew who everyone was looking like without having to be like, and now I'm looking at a reflection in the shop window, which told me that I was wearing tailored organdy trousers.
Man, the like I might have, at some point I might have done it in this book. I don't know, but like looking into a mirror and describing who you are, like every time it happens in the novel, because it's easy. It's like the lowest hanging fruit. One of like the great things.
First day time to notice what I look like for the first time.
Yes. One of the great things about like writing in this, not just this genre, but like the sort of like of mirroring the mid 20th century like hard-boiled detective genre is like there are a lot of shorthanded descriptions in those books where you are not expected to tell the reader every single physical detail about a person. Like if you're only going to spend a scene with somebody, like you can shorthand them in like one sentence, if that. So like that was really nice, of like finding fun ways to describe someone where it's not like giving detailed, concrete, realistic description. So that made it easier and fun.
Yeah, because I feel like with the play, like you have a person there to look at, and so it's like, okay, they're taking care of it, but you could also trust your reader to be like, oh, like he gave me a look you could pour on a waffle. It's like, well, I know what kind of look that is because I've poured things on waffles in the past. Sort of like they can do some of the work for you.
That's a great line. I love that.
It's not mine. It's Raymond Chandler.
I know, yeah, but it's still a great line.
Or maybe P.G. Woodhouse. They went to the same like high school, so they had like the same simile teacher at some point.
Oh, wow.
So it's one of the two of them. I feel like that's my noir contribution. Is that one? Oh, yeah, if you made a bishop kick a hole in a stained glass window, she was one of those dames. Like those are the two. I'm like, I don't remember who said them, but it's one of those two guys, and that's simile writing for a quick sentence. Yeah. But sorry, my doorbell just rang, but I don't know what it is. Anyway, carrying on. I feel like there's also like some supernatural elements in there for like a spooky time of year. How much are you like, I love spooky things, get them in there all the time, or you're like, this is a painful duty, I hate to be scared?
No, I love spooky things. I like it, on my bookshelves, we've got like mystery, graphic novels, science fiction, and then like horror and spec fic are just take up a large chunk of my bookshelves. So I'm, I'm not trying to cram it in. It just happens. And yeah, there is some spooky times. Or yes, it's like really weird to talk about this with a book without spoiling too much.
I don't want to do too many spoilers, but I also want to be like, it's a good book, and I have questions.
But yes, I like spooky times now. I always try and like get that kind of thing in, if possible.
Yeah. No, because I feel like it's hard. Like horror is one of the genres where you sort of know if you're doing it right or not because you have like an actual physical response. Whereas like comedy, like you laugh if it's working well, and like horror, like you get like you can feel something in your gut going. And then I guess like the only other genre where that's the case is erotica, because it's like these are three things where like if they're going well, there's a certain response. And other than that, as a writer, you're just like, hear the words, I'm on my own. Did you ever have a moment when you're like midway through and you're like, oh no, I'm in the marathon. Any other project would appeal to me right now. I can't believe I'm stuck with these people. Or you're just like, no, this is a great way to spend a Wednesday.
I don't know. I think I enjoy writing these characters a lot. So like anytime I get a chance to like talk with Will's voice and live in that world, I'm really happy. That said, I have now that I am like a good deal into the third book with them, every time at multiple points, I am like, nobody else is going to give a crap about this. Like, I find this fascinating. No one else will, because no one else is weird like me. And that's always wrong. I've felt that way in like about nearly every play I've ever written too, like where it's like, I will never find an audience for this, but at least I will enjoy it while I'm writing it. And then who knows? But yeah. I rarely feel like, I hate this. I hate the characters, I'm gonna throw them away. It's usually like, I love them. No one else will. No one else will love them like I do. Which is turns out I'm wrong. Yeah. It's like it. Yeah. Oh, and hopefully, like more people will love them like I do. Yes.
No, and I feel like that is the trick though, because there's this Arnold Lobel short story about this person. About this camel. Who really wants to do ballet, and the camel is like, I will dance for myself alone. And then it turns out, like, I mean, in the story, the camel is really bad at dancing ballet, but the point is that it doesn't matter because ultimately the camel is putting beauty out into the world and people respond to that. But but I feel like if you're trying to like be like, what's the most commercial thing I could possibly create, then people can tell that that's what you're doing, and they're like, this isn't true. Whereas if you're just like, I hope somebody likes this, then
that's what I
do that honesty.
Yeah, that's actually like when I teach a playwriting class, that's like one of the things I tell students on the first day. And we do a little exercise to go along with it. And it's like, what are the things that you love and are passionate about? Like, these are the things you should write about, because you'll bring that love and passion into your writing. And if you're engaged and excited by it, then chances are, like, no matter how bizarro your idea is, like, you will find people who will, like, out in the world, who will look at your weird bizarro child, and be like, I want to adopt it as my own. Yeah.
So what are the things that you were like, I'm passionate about these things, I've got to, or they like, this is the book is the answer to these questions. It's wreck staff mysteries of the past, and like people who got eaten by history, and they're
I mean, like, that's a lot. Like thinking about all the plays that I've written, and this book. So it's like mid-century Americana, circuses and sideshows, queer female protagonists who grew up in hardscrabble, difficult childhoods. Like, dealing with trauma, I think, is like also like a big, massive theme through everything that I've written. Dealing with trauma, and then characters for whom the world is not built, and who have to figure out a way to carve out like a niche for themselves, to survive. Like, those are, like, looking back at all my written work.
Your oeuvre. That's a cool oeuvre. So good going there. I feel like, especially whenever I read like a Spotswood thing, not to be like, yes, the Spotswood thing, but people are always like, it's so hard to write women. I'm like, no, it's not. Look at Steve Spotswood. Like, it's like, they're people. They just have thoughts and people's feelings and thoughts, and it's really not like, I feel like, I'm like, maybe it seems easy, but it's actually very difficult. But can you describe, like, how is it like to write women? What is it? Are they very strange, different? But
no, I don't. Every time I get that, this is a weird backhanded self-compliment. But like, every time I get that compliment, I never know how to respond to it exactly. Like, I'm like, thank you. I just write them. I just imagine, like, if I were them, living in the world they are and wanting the things they do, like, how would I go forward and what would I say and do?
It's like, it would make me feel like, what are other people doing that they don't do that? Because
I know.
Really astounding.
There should be. Yeah, I wish there was more. I don't know why. There isn't.
Yeah, no, but I feel like a nifty thing about your like writing too is I'm often just like, well, like sometimes you'll be like, and BoJack Horseman also does this, where they're like in the background, like you'll have like somebody who's like loading boxes onto a truck, and like I feel like when you're usually like making a thing and like somebody's loading boxes, they're like, well, there's no reason for it like not to be a dude, and you're always like, what if it wasn't a dude? What if the person loading boxes on the truck, like, why not just make that, a female person loading boxes onto a truck? And I'm just like, and it's never like a less interesting truck loading. It's always like, why aren't more people doing this? So I don't know, like, Steve, who is doing this, why aren't other people doing this?
It's
funny, for others, this is not a good question.
Like, I got so coming from theater, where the majority of actors are female, and the majority of like produced plays are majority male parts. Like, I discovered really quickly that like there is like a huge amount of really talented women who go unused every season, like, who are doing great work but never get the chance to. And so like eventually I started, when I was writing, asking myself, I would ask myself, like, is there any reason that this needs to be a man? And like the answer rarely is yes. Like, really almost never. And so I just started writing, for women. And like those were the roles I wrote. Those were like the artists that I became friends with and who I started working with regularly. Yeah, it's yes.
Yes.
I feel like I'm just trailing off a lot and being like, yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
No, I'm a big believer in not like you can start a sentence. You don't have to finish the sentence. Just like see what the air holds. Yeah.
Yeah. Online, it's like there should be like a little sign I can hold up and be like, I'm done now.
Yes. That was the end of the sentence.
Yes.
Yeah. I'm picturing something like a paddle type situation. Oh, speaking of ends of sentences, if anyone has questions, we are happy to answer them. And like actual questions with question marks at the end, or just sort of trailing thoughts and sentiments. So feel free to pop those into the chat or comment section, and we will get at them. Or you can continue to watch us trail off thoughtfully into the event horizon of this conversation. Not the event horizon, because that implies that we're like being sucked into something so like massive that not even light can escape it, which is not, I hope, the case. Although in 2020, it's always hard to rule out.
Always hard. The election is next week.
Yeah. Dude,
oh my God.
8 days. It's very like the Ring territory from the election right now, where like, so how much like research were you doing? I know you got like your Pinterest board. Like, how steeped in the time period were you?
I'm not a huge research person. Like I do not get OCD with my research, I should say. Like what I will frequently do is that I will write a scene and I'll leave like the question marks in there and be like, okay, where would they be? What would this look like? Or I get to a part and be like, does this thing exist yet? And start going down a little rabbit hole of like, what did the New York subway system look like in 1945? Like things like that. Really, like the vast majority of my research was reading books, like mysteries that were written during that decade.
Oh, that's right.
And like hearing about the world that way. It's a fictional world, but it's still like a realistic, like it's realism.
Yeah, it's like all the stuff you take for granted in the background of like Twilight Zone episodes, which like, of course you'll have like this bed at like a boarding house, and of course you'll have this lamp, and it's like, which lamp, which bed? Like I'm always just like, show me the tiny details that you took for granted. This is what I want.
Yeah. I also I feel when we think about the past and we think about these like slices of these slices of the 20th century, we kind of like flatten them. And we're like, oh, it's the 1940s. It's everyone's in military uniforms. There's confetti flying everywhere. Everyone has victory gardens. Everyone lives in like these cottages and suburbs. It's or it's the 50s. It's all suburbia.
All men in gray flannel suits. They got picket fences as far as I can see. Yeah,
and I'm like, no, it's like we have they had just as much variety of people and places and socioeconomic status and worlds within worlds. Like New York 1945 was not one thing. It was probably even more than it is today. Like 1,000 things, 1,000 places. So that made it really nice. I was like, as I was writing through it, I'm like, if I can imagine a thing, it probably existed, or some form of it, or some aspect, some ancestor of. And yeah, I'm like, oh my God, I do like, that's my, that's the end of.
Now we're noticing it.
Now I'm like, oh no, how long I've been doing that? My entire life? I don't know.
No, so recently a friend of mine, I was like, it just occurred to me that if you say, oh no, every time you fart, people notice it way more than if you don't say anything. And she's like, yes, you've been doing this since high school. And I'm like, oh no, but I hadn't farted that time. That was just my response to the information that I'd received. But yeah, no, it's like, now that once you notice it, it's deadly, in other words. But no, it's like we have one question period. And so if you feel like answering, for Steve, what are your 2 unsold novels about?
Awesome. Yeah, I was like, we have no comments, and I'm like, oh, that's because I'm looking at the private chat. Hi, Seth. I know Seth. So my two unsold novels. One was a contemporary thriller. I haven't talked about it in years, so it's really hard to like elevator pitch it. Contemporary thriller, a queer female protagonist, living in DC this time, and a lot of like supernatural elements as she has to excavate deeply buried old trauma. Shocking. And then the second was a young adult superhero novel that I wrote because my wife Jessica, who is a young adult author, we were watching. It was like one of the earlier seasons of Arrow, and she was like, "You should." We were really liking it, so it's one of the earlier seasons. So, and she was like, "You should really write a YA superhero novel," and I'm like, "That's a dumb idea," and then I did it. It was a good idea. But I don't. But it turns out when you don't read a lot of a certain kind of book, it's really hard to write it. And while I read like more comic book stuff than I'm comfortable saying, the YA I read is mostly just my wife and my wife's friends. so like I wrote this and I queried with it, and I was like, okay,
yeah,
it was. I'm like, I'm proud of it, but I'm also like, people are doing it way better. Yeah. It's like, yes, those are the other two books.
Oh, that's cool. But I feel like that's a completely true thing where it's like, oh, there's people who like, they just read this and do this, and this is what comes through their pores, and this is how they imagine things. And I'm like, I've seen one or two, and maybe I could do it. And it's like, that will not go as well, although you can still make something that has integrity and you've done your best with.
Yes, exactly. You can have fun doing it. As long as you have fun.
Yeah. No, because it's like sometimes people like, you can tell that they thought, oh, maybe this will be easy to make, and that's why they made one. And it's like that. Usually the reason things look like they're maybe easy to make is because actually somebody's run into all of the possible problems you can run into while making them. And that's why they're like, oh, like the superhero films these days, if I only could make one. It's like, trust me, people they've been banging their head against this since decades.
Yep. Or like people who are like, I think this will sell. Let me try and write that. I'm like, oh God, good luck.
Quibi. Remember Quibi?
Oh, Quibi. Yeah, I remember. It was last week.
Someone who's like, I don't like content and I have contempt for young people. Like, let's all make really short things that they can watch on their phones. Probably that's going to be cool. And it's like, no, it won't be a success at all.
No. Well, it's also, I think, like, you can watch it on your phone while you're commuting to your office job.
Yeah.
And then suddenly, oh, no.
Yeah, there was no commute.
Anyone else have questions?
Yeah.
That was very nice. Now that I can actually see the chat.
Yeah, it does. The public chat, in addition to the private chat, it's also fun because you can see what people's Facebook avatars are or their YouTube avatars. But no, are there any other genres you would like to get into other than like detective, mystery? YA?
Like contemporary, I like contemporary thrillers. I enjoy, and horror, like that. Like considering that like one area. Yeah, and also like I like comic books. If like, DC Comics walked up tomorrow and was like, hey, do you have an idea for something? Do you want to write something? I would not, kick them out. I don't know what it would be exactly. But yeah.
You wouldn't kick them off the doorstep for eating crackers on the doorstep?
No. Yeah, nowadays it's like, no, it's got to be on the doorstep because of social distancing.
Got to safe distance,
yeah. Yeah. See that? I'm looking at the chat. No other. This by the way, you can't. this is the problem with not live events. Like you can't like wait people out and shame them with your eyes and be like, You can't see like, oh, that person has a question, but they're scared.
Yeah, I can tell. I can tell it's lurking within you, Michael Bernstein. Oh wait, I guess we've got are there side stories? Oh, you got it.
Okay. Are there side stories or mini adventures for your characters that you've been tempted to write short stories about? Well, I haven't lived with these characters terribly long, but yes, I think even in this first book, there are sort of mentions of previous adventures and like other things, and as like hopefully as this goes forward, there will be gaps between novels where stuff happens, and yeah, I have ideas for short stories that I don't know what venue, I don't know where I would put them, and who would want them. But also, so with this book, the first chapter is sort of a mini adventure story. It was like, I mean, for this one, it's like the meeting of Will Parker and Lillian Pentecost. But it is like sort of a self-contained adventure mystery, which I enjoyed doing so much that I think that's going to be a standard structure going forward.
Ooh, like, yeah. You got your like, teaser, and then you got your plot.
It's like a cold open. It's like I'm doing, and I'm right now, unless edits make things go sideways. The same thing is happening in book 2, where like the first chapter is a sort of, you get, like you could take it out and enjoy it as like a little mini Will and Lillian mystery adventure. And I'm writing, and like what I have so far of book 3 is the same thing. I'm like, I like this structure. I'm a big proponent of starting things off with a bang. Like, let's just get going. Even if like the going is not necessarily like the main plot. I really enjoy that. So yes, the answer is yes to Michael's question. There's some.
Hey, a predictably excellent question from fellow author and spouse, Jessica Spotswood.
Yeah. Oh, and we can now read it on the screen.
Yeah. She wants you to tell us about your writing process. Do you edit as you go, and when and where do you write?
So my wife is asking this because we are polar opposites when it comes to this. She likes writing well into the evening, and she edits as she goes so that her first drafts look freaking meticulous. Like, they are beautiful. Her first drafts look like my 5th drafts. I, on the other hand, I am a morning person. I don't know how the heck that happens because I'm.
Oh, congratulations!
I know, I'm a theater person too. That shouldn't work.
No, yeah.
So like, I get up, like I wake with the sun. Sometimes before it, inconveniently. So I will write between like when I wake up until like lunchtime. Like, that's when my brain is working. And I will absolutely not edit it as I go. Like, I am a big fan of like quick, sloppy first drafts. Get it out onto the page or the computer as swiftly as possible, so that then I can see the entire shape of a thing and figure out what it is and what it should look like, and then I can go back and make it pretty. Like, I will go through, like, in the time that she does one draft, I will go through like 4. And she hates me for this until I remind her that like by the time I get to my 5th draft, it is up to her standard for first draft. Yes. So that is how I write. Thank you for that question, dear. She is 2 floors above me right now.
Oh, wow.
Yes. I am in the basement. She is on the 2nd floor. It really is. We're just opposites.
Never the twain shall meet, mountains and the sea. And yeah. Ooh, we got a Patrick Flynn question. Yeah. Besides being the sole visualizer of your work, hello, Patrick. Love Actually, what's the biggest difference between being a novelist and a playwright?
Besides that, Jesus. I mean, it's not just being the sole visualizer. I mean, like, that is a big thing. because it's not just like the fact that you are the only person visualizing it. It is that you have so much to create. Like there is, with plays, it's like you're creating this sort of, to go super geeky, like a mech armor that people are going to like wear and like
Yes.
Like something that empowers your artists to do the great superhero things. But with a novel, you so much more to fill in. Like you're responsible for really just every aspect of the world creation. But I think the other, like the thing that goes hand in hand with that's a big difference is that it's like for the vast majority of the creative process, it's just me. Like it's just me in this office in front of a computer, like creating, like writing, trying to like pull stuff out of my own brain. Like, which is, I was an only child, so I'm comfortable with that. Sitting in a room and making up like characters. But I do, especially in this time, miss working with other artists in like the collaborative process. I do have some fantastic editors who are really in sync with like my vision for the books, and who have, I don't think yet that like they've given me a note that I have disagreed with, to the point where I have to be like, no, you're wrong. So I do have people that I get to play with, but not in the way of theater. So I would like to do theater again with humans.
Yes, anything with humans.
Anything with humans where we're all in the same physical space, breathing the same non-infected air, would be super. Yeah.
I mean, now we've got a whole bunch of awesome questions piling in. So I think we've got time for a couple more. So keep them coming, because they're like, I'm like, why didn't I ask any of these? I'm embarrassed. But yeah, so Michael wants to know, do you read your reviews? Is that different for a play versus for a novel?
That's a good question. I do read my reviews. I have a wonderful publicist at Doubleday, and also I have I've been in touch with the marketing team in the UK, and like both of which the UK version comes out. I want to say November 12th.
Hey.
But they've been both great about like sending reviews on to me. Only the good ones. If they're really bad ones, they haven't sent them. So I have read them. I get super embarrassed by them because people have been saying nice things, and I'm like, you're okay. I have your opinion, I guess. And I take a compliment like I take a punch, which means that I dodge, deflect, and try and hit back. Yeah. But for plays, it's weird.
I like that.
For plays, like you have like a month-long run. You get, if you're lucky, 3 reviews, and it all happens during the time when everyone who's gonna see the thing sees the thing. With books, it's like I've been getting reviews for a couple months now, and the book's not even out. And there will be who knows how many of them reviews going forward. So that's the difference. Eventually, I will stop reading them, just because.
Yeah, there's a certain point when but because like it exists in time. It's like you've made this thing and people can access it whenever they want to. It's wild. Instead of like the 3-week window of magic.
Yeah, it's really weird. I'm like, oh no, this is going to be out there forever, and anyone can read it whenever they want. Like they don't have to like get their tickets and get a seat and be like, you missed it, guys. Hopefully we'll have a revival.
Yeah.
And I hear you should avoid Goodreads reviews.
I have yes. Say anything bad about anyone, but yeah, don't.
I think if they're good, let them be, and if they're bad, let them be.
Yeah. Yes.
I think you guys hit all the questions, so that was good.
Yeah. Yep, and we have only gone a little bit over time.
Oh, sweet. Yeah.
Better than what we would usually do.
Yeah, we're running a basically tight ship.
Yes.
So I have greatly enjoyed the conversation. So I hope you guys did as well. You seem like you're having fun. So
Yeah, this has been great.
Yeah.
So
But yeah, everybody buy Fortune Favors the Dead.
that's right.
Yes.
Links are there to buy the books.
Yeah, from One More Page Books, right there. Yeah.
Yeah.
Should we plug that? Do we have like the?
Hey. There
everything
we
we have to do?
Yep, the links are in there. We do. I can't remember if I mentioned that. Yeah, I think I did. That Steve's going to be personalizing copies that are purchased by tomorrow evening. Otherwise, we'll have some more signed copies of his book as well. And Alexandra has also agreed to sign some copies for One More Page. So both of the links to both of those books are in the comments. So you should easily be able to find them. They're also on the website on the event page. So easy access. Thanks, everybody. This was fun. This was a much better way to spend the evening than watching CNN or C-SPAN.
Oh, yeah.
I hope so. Oh, my gosh.
Yes.
Oh. Yeah, this is fantastic. Thank you so much, Alex. Thanks for doing this.
Oh, thank you. And thank you for the book. And seriously, everybody, Fortune Favors the Dead. Available near you right now, today.
Yay.
Unless you're in the UK, in which case it'll be available November 12th.
Yes. I hope I'm right, or I'm going to get emails. Yeah.
All right. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Happy Monday.
Thanks.